Black CEO kicked off a luxury yacht party. Silence fell when he finally spoke. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. People like you don't belong on boats like this. Step off the yacht. Now. The sentence cracked across the deck like a whip. Music stuttered. Laughter collapsed mid-breath. A dozen crystal flutes froze in midair, catching the amber glow of deck lights as if the night itself had been paused. The luxury yacht rocked gently on the dark water, all white lacquer and polished teak, floating arrogance wrapped in elegance. Behind the hostess, blonde hair pinned perfectly, silver gown hugging confidence she hadn't earned, guests in tuxedos and sequins watched, hungry for spectacle. He stood alone near the rail. Black suit. Clean lines. No visible tension. Just a man with his hands relaxed at his sides, gaze steady, posture precise. The kind of stillness that didn't ask permission to exist. The hostess took a step closer, clipboard tucked tight against her ribs like a badge of authority. This is a private event, she said, louder now, projecting for witnesses. Invitation only. And I've checked the list twice. A few guests nodded. Someone smirked. Phones rose discreetly, lenses peeking from behind champagne stems. This was how nights like this entertained themselves, by deciding who counted. He didn't argue. Didn't explain. He simply looked past her, out over the water, where the city lights shimmered like a promise sold too cheaply. Did you hear me? She snapped. I said step off. The words people like you hung in the air, sticky with assumption. The kind of phrase that never needed explanation. The kind that pretended to be about rules while meaning something older and uglier. A man near the bar chuckled into his drink. Probably wandered over from the marina, he murmured to his date, loud enough to be heard. She laughed, a sound thin as ice. Two crew members shifted near the gangway. They hesitated, not out of kindness, but uncertainty. He didn't look like trouble. He didn't look lost. He looked intentional. The hostess mistook the hesitation for weakness. Security, she called, sharp and practiced. Escort him off before this becomes an issue. The word escort landed with the weight of permission. Permission to humiliate. Permission to touch. Permission to remove. He finally turned back to her. Up close, the contrast unsettled her. His calm wasn't performative. It didn't waver. His eyes held no apology, no plea, only assessment. As if she were the one being weighed. I was invited, he said. The sentence was quiet. Unthreatening. Final. She laughed. By who? The crowd leaned in. The ocean lapped against the hull, a soft, indifferent rhythm. Somewhere below deck, the DJ kept playing, unaware the party had already fractured. He didn't answer. That silence irritated her more than any protest could have. You think silence makes you mysterious, she scoffed. It makes you suspicious. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. He inhaled once slow, measured, then let it out. I came, he said, because I was told this was a night for partners. A ripple moved through the guests. The hostess's smile tightened. Partners, she repeated, savoring the word. You're not a partner. You're a guest at best. And even that's being generous. Her finger extended, pointing toward the gangway. A command disguised as etiquette. Off, she said. Now. He glanced at the finger. Then at the guests. At the phones. At the crew waiting for a signal. Interesting, he murmured. What's interesting, she snapped, is how long you've already stayed. He reached into his jacket, not fast, not dramatic, and pulled out his phone. He didn't raise it. Didn't show the screen. He simply held it, the way someone holds a key before opening a door. The deck seemed to lean closer. You're making a scene, she warned. No, he said softly. I'm witnessing one. The word slid into the space between them and settled there. Heavy. Unavoidable. A woman in a gold dress lowered her phone. Another guest set his glass down, the clink too loud in the hush. The crew members stopped moving altogether. The hostess opened her mouth to speak again, another order, another insult, but nothing came out. Because for the first time that night, she wasn't certain who had the right to decide who belonged. And as the yacht drifted under the indifferent stars, one truth began to surface, slow and unmistakable. He hadn't been kicked out yet. He had simply been underestimated. The hostess straightened her shoulders, recovering quickly. Authority, real or borrowed, was a costume she knew how to wear well. You're delaying the event, she said, projecting calm for the audience she could feel leaning in. This isn't a debate. This is a guest list. She turned the clipboard toward herself, flipping pages with unnecessary force, as if the paper might confess. Names. Sponsors. Families that had passed through the circle for decades. She paused just long enough to be seen checking again, performing fairness, then snapped it shut. No, she said. You're not on it? A murmur rippled across the deck. The kind that didn't ask questions, only sought confirmation of what everyone already believed. A man in a white dinner jacket leaned toward his companion. Must be a +1 who got bold, he whispered. They always do. The companion nodded, eyes fixed on the scene. Confidence without credentials, she replied, amused. Dangerous combination. The words floated freely because they assumed they were safe. Marcus watched the assumptions form, soft, careless, unanimous. He recognized the rhythm. He had heard it in boardrooms where his proposals were praised but his presence questioned. At fundraisers where his checks were welcome but his seat was not. Assumption was the cheapest currency in rooms like this, and it spent easily. The hostess took a half step back, raising her voice just enough to sound reasonable. We're not trying to embarrass you, she said, a lie delivered with practiced grace. But there are protocols. Standards. Standards. Another word that pretended neutrality. A woman near the rail tilted her phone for a better angle. This is wild, she whispered. He really thought he could just stand there. Security edged closer now, not touching him, not yet. Their presence narrowed the space, corralling him toward the gangway with bodies instead of hands. Sir, one of them said, polite but firm, we're going to need you to cooperate. Marcus looked at the man. Young. Careful. A job to protect, not a judgment to make. I am, Marcus replied. The simplicity unsettled them. The hostess exhaled sharply, frustration leaking through the veneer. You see, she said to no one in particular. He won't even tell us who invited him. That's not true, Marcus said. Her head snapped toward him. Then say it. He met her gaze. You wouldn't recognize the name. A few guests laughed. Not loudly. Comfortably. That's not how invitations work, she shot back. This isn't a charity open house. Isn't it? Marcus asked, glancing at the banner fluttering near the upper deck, a night for visionaries. The irony was almost polite. She followed his glance, then scoffed. Visionaries are vetted. By you, he asked. The question was gentle. Surgical. Her jaw tightened. By people who understand this world. Another ripple. Another nod. The assumption hardened into consensus. Marcus felt the moment crystallize the exact second when the room decided who he was. Not by evidence. By comfort. He slipped his phone back into his pocket, unhurried, and folded his hands behind his back. A posture that read, to the untrained eye, like compliance. To others, like patience. "Let's not make this bigger than it is," the hostess said, lowering her voice again, stepping closer as if proximity could restore control. "We can walk you down quietly." Quietly. As if humiliation needed acoustics. Marcus leaned slightly toward her, just enough that she had to listen. "You've already made it big," he said. "You just didn't notice when." She scoffed, but her eyes flicked once to the guests, to the phones, to the security waiting for her signal. The deck felt tighter now. The ocean farther away. "Last chance," she said. Off the yacht. Marcus turned, not toward the gangway, but toward the crowd. Faces he didn't know. Names that meant something to someone. Power arranged like decor. "Before I go," he said evenly, "I want to be clear about one thing." The murmurs stilled. Not because they respected him, because curiosity always outranked contempt. "I didn't come here to be welcomed," Marcus continued. "I came to observe." The hostess laughed, brittle. "Observe what?" He looked back at her. At the clipboard. At the finger she'd pointed. At the certainty she wore like jewelry. "Who decides," he said, "and who assumes they can?" Silence pressed in, heavier than before. The kind that made even the waves seem intrusive. The hostess opened her mouth to respond, to reclaim the room, but the words tangled. For the first time that night, she felt it, the possibility that the rules she enforced weren't hers to wield. And somewhere beneath the deck lights and champagne laughter, the balance began to shift slowly, quietly away from assumption and toward consequence. The pause stretched longer than anyone expected. Not the dramatic kind, the uncomfortable kind. The kind that made people shift their weight, glance at their phones without unlocking them, take sips they didn't want just to feel busy. The hostess broke it first. "That's enough," she said, voice clipped, control slipping at the edges. "This isn't a philosophy seminar. It's a yacht, and you're trespassing." Trespassing. The word landed heavier than the others. It reframed the scene from social discomfort to accusation. One of the security men stepped forward, closer now. "Sir," he said again, firmer this time. "Please move toward the gangway." Marcus looked at him, not with defiance, not with fear, but with recognition. The man was doing what he'd been told. The system worked best when no one questioned the script. "I will," Marcus said. The hostess relaxed, just a fraction. Victory, she thought. Control restored. Then Marcus added, "But not yet." Her relief snapped into irritation. "You don't get to negotiate," she said sharply. "You had your moment." "I'm not negotiating," Marcus replied. "I'm clarifying." A few guests exchanged looks. Someone near the back muttered, "Who does he think he is?" Another answered quietly, "Someone who doesn't seem rushed." The hostess lifted her chin. "Clarify quickly." Marcus turned slightly, angling his body so he could see the deck as a whole. The guests. The staff. The crew pretending not to listen. The phones pretending not to record. "You're treating this like a mistake," he said evenly. "Like I wandered into the wrong place." "That's because you did," she shot back. He nodded. "That's what you believe." "And that's what matters," she replied. "Belief determines access." There it was. The unspoken rule, finally spoken aloud. Marcus let the words settle. "Then let me ask you something." She folded her arms. "Make it quick." Who told you, he asked, that you were qualified to decide that? The question hit sideways. A few guests stiffened. Someone near the bar stopped smiling altogether. The hostess's expression flickered only for a second, but it was enough. I work for the owner, she snapped. I represent the people who paid for tonight. Do you? Marcus asked. Her eyes narrowed. Yes. Which ones? That did it? Her composure cracked, just enough to reveal the nerves underneath. Security, she said sharply. Now. The word now echoed, sharp and absolute. The security men moved in closer, one on either side. Not touching him, but close enough that everyone understood what came next. Marcus felt the shift. The escalation. This was the line. Cross it, and the night would end the way they wanted it to. He didn't move. Instead, he reached into his jacket again. The phones came up higher this time. No one tried to hide it anymore. The hostess laughed, sharp and brittle. What, are you calling someone? She scoffed. That won't help. Marcus pulled the phone out, glanced at the screen, then looked back at her. No, he said. I'm answering. He tapped once. Listened. Yes, he said quietly. I'm on the deck. A pause. Yes, Marcus continued. They're asking me to leave. The hostess rolled her eyes and turned to the guests, performing dismissal. Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the interruption. We'll have this handled in just a moment. Marcus didn't raise his voice. Not yet, he said into the phone. I want you to hear something first. The wind picked up, carrying the sound of the water against the hull. The yacht felt suddenly smaller, tighter, as if the night itself were leaning in. He held the phone slightly away from his ear, not toward the hostess, not toward the security, but toward the space between them. I want you to hear how confidently they're wrong. The hostess froze. What is this? She demanded. Marcus ended the call without answering. Slipped the phone back into his jacket. For the record, he said calmly, I don't mind leaving. Her smile returned, thin and triumphant. But, Marcus continued, eyes steady, voice unraised, I won't be escorted. The deck went still. You don't get a choice, she said. Marcus looked at her, not with anger, not with challenge, but with something colder. Everyone does, he replied. They just don't always realize when they're making one. The security men hesitated again. This time, it wasn't confusion. It was instinct. Around them, the guests felt it too, the subtle, unsettling sense that the situation was no longer unfolding the way it was supposed to. The hostess opened her mouth to reassert control. But the words didn't come. Because somewhere between assumption and action, she had lost certainty. And Marcus, still standing, still unremoved, had gained something far more dangerous than permission. Time. Silence settled in layers. Not sudden. Not dramatic. It crept across the deck the way fog moves over water, quiet, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Even the music below deck felt distant now, muffled, as if the yacht itself had decided to listen. The hostess sensed it slipping. This is getting out of hand, she said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. You're disrupting a private event. Marcus didn't respond right away. He looked past her, toward the skyline again. Toward the towers of glass and steel rising in the distance, each one a monument to deals made behind closed doors by people who never thought they'd be questioned on a yacht like this. You keep saying private, he said finally. But you've made it very public. A man near the rail cleared his throat. Another guest shifted, the heel of her shoe scraping softly against the deck, too loud in the quiet. Phone stayed raised now, no longer pretending to be subtle. The hostess followed the direction of his gaze, irritation sharpening. Don't lecture me, she snapped. You're the one refusing to leave. Marcus turned back to her. Slowly. I told you, he said, I don't mind leaving. Her lips curled. Good. But not like this. The words were calm. Reasonable. Unyielding. She stared at him, incredulous. You think you're owed an explanation? No, Marcus replied. I think you owe one. A ripple passed through the crowd. Someone whispered, to who? Marcus heard it. He answered anyway. To yourself. That did something. The hostess inhaled sharply, then squared her shoulders, posture tightening as if she could physically reassert authority. Security, she said again, louder, firmer. I'm done with this. The security men exchanged a glance. One of them stepped closer, hesitation etched into his face. Sir, he began. Marcus raised a hand, not commanding, not aggressive. Just enough to pause him. Before you do anything, Marcus said, voice even, ask yourself a question. The guard frowned. What question? Who benefits, Marcus said, from you moving me right now? The guard didn't answer. He didn't move either. The hostess's confidence wavered. This isn't your decision, she snapped at him. Do your job. He looked at her. Then back at Marcus. Then at the phones pointed in their direction. This is my job, he said quietly. To keep things from becoming a problem. Marcus nodded once. Exactly. That word problem hung between them. Undefined. Dangerous. The hostess felt it. She stepped back half a pace, then caught herself and stepped forward again, reclaiming ground that suddenly felt unstable. You're turning nothing into something, she said, more sharply now. You could have walked away 5 minutes ago. Marcus met her eyes. And you could have asked a question instead of making a judgment. She laughed, but it was strained. I don't need to ask questions. I already know. That, Marcus said, is the issue. The wind picked up, lifting the edge of her gown, rattling the banner overhead. A night for visionaries flapped once, loudly, then stilled. The hostess glanced at it, then back at him. Enough, she said. This ends now. Marcus took a small step not toward the gangway, but closer to the center of the deck. Close enough that the guests had to adjust, had to make room. That movement changed the geometry of the scene. He was no longer being removed. He was repositioning. I agree, Marcus said. It does end now. Her eyes narrowed. Then leave. He shook his head. No, he said. Now it begins. A few gasps slipped out before anyone could stop them. The hostess opened her mouth ready with another order, another insult, but Marcus spoke first. Look around, he said, not raising his voice. Every person here thinks this night is about celebration. Status. Access. He let the silence answer. It's not, Marcus continued. It's about exposure. Exposure to what? She demanded. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He let the question sit, let curiosity replace contempt. To the difference, he said at last, between authority that's assigned and authority that's earned. The deck felt smaller now. The lights brighter. The water closer. The hostess swallowed, just once. You're bluffing, she said. Marcus smiled faintly. Not amused. Certain. No, he replied. I'm patient. And for the first time since she'd pointed at him and told him to leave, the hostess understood something she hadn't considered before. This man wasn't stalling. He was waiting. And whatever he was waiting for was already on its way. The shift didn't announce itself. It revealed itself. A murmur moved through the crowd, not laughter this time, not mockery but recalibration. The kind that happens when people realize they may have misread the room. Or worse, misjudged a person. The hostess felt it first. She glanced around, searching for reinforcement. The easy nods were gone. The amused smiles had flattened into curiosity. Even the phones still raised were steadier now, less hungry, more cautious. Marcus stood where he was, hands relaxed, posture unchanged. He hadn't grown louder. He hadn't stepped forward again. Yet somehow, the space belonged to him now. "You keep talking like you're important," the hostess said, trying to sound amused. "But important people don't get stopped at the rail." Marcus looked at her, not offended, not defensive. "They do," he said. "When they're not expected to look like themselves." That landed. A woman near the bar blinked. A man in a tailored tux adjusted his cufflinks, suddenly unsure of what they signaled. The hostess opened her mouth to reply, then closed it again, recalculating. Marcus continued, voice level, measured. "I've been in rooms where my name never appears on a list," he said. "Where decisions are made about me by people who've never met me. People who think access is proof." He let his gaze sweep the deck. "It isn't." A guest whispered, "Who is he?" Another answered quietly, "I don't know. But he doesn't sound confused." The hostess stiffened. "This isn't a courtroom," she snapped. "You don't get to monologue." Marcus nodded. "You're right. It's a deck." He gestured lightly with one hand. "Which makes this simple." The security men remained still. One of them shifted his weight, then stopped. The other glanced toward the bridge, waiting perhaps for guidance that hadn't come yet. The hostess followed that glance. Her confidence wavered again. "You said you were invited," she said. "By who?" Marcus met her eyes. "By the people who needed this night to happen." She scoffed. "That doesn't answer the question." "It does," he replied. "Just not the way you expect." The wind carried the scent of salt and engine oil. The yacht rocked gently, indifferent to hierarchy. Above them, the banner fluttered once more, "A night for visionaries," its edge snapping sharply before settling. Marcus looked up at it. "Visionaries," he repeated softly. "People who see value before it's obvious." He looked back at her. "And people who miss it because they're busy guarding the door." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone cleared their throat. The hostess felt the attention slipping, the spotlight no longer aligned with her authority. "This is ridiculous," she said, louder than necessary. "You're not special." Marcus smiled faintly. "I know." That threw her. "I'm not special," he continued. "I'm prepared." He reached into his jacket again, slower this time. "Not to provoke. To demonstrate ease." He pulled out his phone and unlocked it, not to show the screen, but to check something. A single notification. He read it, then locked the phone and slid it back into place. "That was fast," he said, almost to himself. "What was?" the hostess demanded. Marcus didn't answer her. Instead, he addressed the deck. "Some of you are here because you were born into rooms like this," he said. "Some because you married into them. Some because you learned how to act like you belonged." A few faces hardened. A few softened. "And some," Marcus continued, "are here because they built what keeps the lights on." The air tightened. He turned back to the hostess. "Tonight exists because someone like me decided it should." Her expression flickered confusion first, then something closer to alarm. "That's not true," she said quickly. "This event, this yacht, is chartered," Marcus finished calmly. "By a holding group you don't recognize, because you were never meant to." A murmur broke free this time, uncontrolled. The hostess took a step back without meaning to. "You're lying." Marcus shook his head. "If I were," he said, "this would already be over." The implication settled heavily. A man near the rail checked his phone, eyes widening slightly. Another guest leaned in to see his screen. Whispers sharpened. The hostess looked around again, searching for anyone to anchor her certainty. But the anchors were slipping. She looked back at Marcus. Then why didn't you say something earlier? Marcus considered the question. Because, he said, I wanted to see who you'd be before you knew. The silence that followed was no longer curious. It was calculating. And for the first time that night, the hostess realized the truth wasn't approaching. It was already standing in front of her. The phone buzzed again. Short. Controlled. The kind of vibration that meant confirmation, not conversation. Marcus didn't look at it right away. He let the sound exist. Several heads turned at once. A few guests instinctively checked their own screens, as if expecting something to appear there too. The hostess noticed her eyes tracking reactions instead of commands now. What is this? She asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Some kind of performance. Marcus finally glanced down. One message. No emojis. No explanations. Just a green check and a time stamp. He slipped the phone back into his jacket. It's done, he said. Her laugh came out wrong. Too quick. Too loud. What is? Marcus looked around the deck again, not theatrically, not to command attention. Simply to include everyone. The assumption phase, he said. A man near the bar frowned. What does that mean? It means, Marcus replied evenly, we're past the part where you guess who I am. The hostess crossed her arms, gripping them tighter than necessary. You still haven't proven anything. Marcus nodded. I don't need to. That unsettled her more than any threat could have. One of the crew members stepped closer, not toward Marcus, but toward the hostess. He leaned in, whispering something she didn't want to hear. Her expression changed immediately. What? She hissed. The crew member swallowed. The bridge is asking about the charter. The word landed like a dropped glass. Marcus didn't smile. Tell them, he said calmly, they can check the account. The hostess turned on him. You don't get to give orders here. Marcus met her eyes. I didn't. He gestured slightly toward the crew member. I made a suggestion. The crew member hesitated, then nodded and moved away quickly, urgency replacing hesitation. A low murmur rose again, this time edged with uncertainty. The hostess scanned the deck, searching for someone to laugh this off with her. No one met her gaze. Several guests were already on their phones, scrolling, typing, refreshing. A man in a navy tuxedo muttered, "That's not possible." Marcus heard him. "It is," he said. "You just weren't told." The hostess took another step back. Her heels caught slightly in the teak grooves, and she steadied herself with a hand on the railing. "A small thing. But everyone saw it?" "You think this gives you control," she snapped, trying to recover. "One account doesn't make you the owner." Marcus finished. The word dropped into the silence like a stone. "No," she said immediately. Too immediately. "That's impossible." Marcus tilted his head. "Of the yacht." Her mouth opened. Closed. "Not exactly," he continued. "But of the night." A guest near the rail whispered, "What does that mean?" Marcus answered without looking at him. "It means the charter is mine. The insurance rider. The security contract. The event logistics." The murmurs sharpened into whispers. "The sponsor?" someone asked. Marcus didn't correct them. The hostess's face drained of color. "You're lying," she said again, but the word had lost its force. "If I were," Marcus replied, "the bridge wouldn't be calling you next." As if on cue, her earpiece crackled. She froze. Slowly, she lifted a finger and pressed it in, turning away just enough for the deck to see her profile. Her posture stiffened as she listened. "Yes," she said. "I understand." A pause. "I didn't know," she added, quietly this time. The guests leaned in, the way people do when they sense a confession. She lowered her hand and turned back to Marcus. "I wasn't informed," she said, choosing her words carefully now. "There must have been a miscommunication." Marcus nodded once. "There usually is." Her eyes flicked to the security men. They hadn't moved. They weren't waiting for her anymore. "What do you want?" she asked. The question came out smaller than she intended. Marcus considered her. Not cruelly. "Precisely. I want you," he said, "to finish the night exactly as you started it." Confusion crossed her face. "What does that mean?" "It means," Marcus continued, "you stand by your decision." Her brow furrowed. "You want me to throw you out?" "No," Marcus replied. "I want you to understand what it costs." The deck was silent now. No music. No laughter. Just water against hull and breath against nerves. "You told everyone I didn't belong," Marcus said. "Now let them see who decides that." He stepped back, not retreating, but creating space. "For the record," he added calmly, "I'm not staying." The hostess blinked. "You're leaving?" "Yes," Marcus said. "On my terms." He turned toward the gangway. But this time, no one moved to escort him. They stood aside. And as Marcus walked forward unhurried, unchallenged, the truth settled fully over the deck. The power had already shifted. The only thing left was for everyone else to accept it. Marcus didn't rush. He stepped onto the gangway with the same measured pace he'd held all night, the deck lights catching the sharp lines of his suit as he moved. No one touched him. No one spoke. The security men stood aside, hands clasped, eyes forward, not guarding an exit anymore, but witnessing a conclusion. Behind him, the deck remained frozen. The hostess stood where she was, clipboard slack in her hand now, its edge tapping lightly against her thigh as if trying to remind her who she'd been 5 minutes earlier. Around her, the guests watched Marcus descend, not with triumph, not with relief, but with the quiet dread of people realizing they'd bet on the wrong certainty. A man near the rail finally broke the silence. "So, is the party over?" No one laughed. Another guest checked her phone, eyes widening. "The sponsor page just went dark," she whispered. "That did it?" The murmurs surged, urgent, overlapping, no longer controlled. "What does that mean? Did he pull out? Is the charter cancelled?" The hostess turned sharply, trying to reclaim the center. "Everyone, please," she said, voice strained. "This is being handled." But the words landed flat. One of the crew members returned from the bridge, face pale. He leaned toward her and spoke quietly, urgently. She listened, nodding once, then again, each nod heavier than the last. When he finished, she closed her eyes for a brief moment. Then she looked up at the guests. "There's been a change," she said carefully. "We're going to need everyone to disembark earlier than planned." "What?" someone snapped. "Why?" She swallowed. "The charter has been terminated." The deck erupted. "You can't do that. This is ridiculous. I flew in for this." Phones lit up in earnest now, not to film, but to salvage. To call assistance. Lawyers. Anyone who might explain how a night like this could collapse so quickly. Marcus reached the dock and stopped. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. He turned back once. Not dramatically. Not for the crowd. For the hostess. She met his gaze across the distance. The water between them shimmered, reflecting broken lights and fractured confidence. "You asked earlier what I wanted," Marcus said, voice carrying easily over the hush that followed. This is it. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. You wanted me gone, he continued. So now the night is. A few guests stared at her, accusation replacing amusement. This is your fault, someone hissed. She looked away. Marcus nodded once, as if acknowledging an account settled. He stepped fully onto the dock. Behind him, the yacht still gleaming, still expensive felt suddenly smaller. Less powerful. Just a vessel without permission to pretend it decided anything on its own. The guests were being ushered toward the exits now, frustration rising with every step. The hostess stood aside, no longer directing, no longer central, just present. Marcus walked away without looking back again. He didn't need to. The lesson had already landed. On the deck, amid champagne left untouched and music that never resumed, one truth circulated freely at last. They hadn't lost the night because of a misunderstanding. They'd lost it because they were certain, too certain, that they knew who belonged. And certainty, Marcus knew, was the most expensive mistake of all. By morning, the yacht was already a rumor. Photos circulated, first blurry shots of guests stepping off the dock early, heels in hand, tuxedo jackets folded over arms. Then came the clips, muted audio, confused faces, a hostess standing too still while others moved around her. No one posted the beginning. No one needed to. The story had written itself. Group chats lit up across the city. What really happened? Who was he? Did you hear the charter got pulled in real time? Assumptions unraveled in public, the same way they'd been built, quickly, carelessly, and without permission. By noon, the sponsor list for the event was gone. The website refreshed to a blank page. Calls went unanswered. Statements were delayed. The hostess sat in a quiet office, heels off, clipboard on the desk like a relic from a different life. She replayed the night again and again, not the moment she pointed, but the moment she didn't ask. The moment she decided knowing wasn't necessary. Across the city, Marcus read the coverage without expression. He didn't comment. He didn't correct names or clarify motives. He let the silence do what it always did, separate noise from truth. A message came in from a colleague. Handled cleanly. Marcus replied with a single word. Good. That evening, invitations to future events quietly changed tone. New lines appeared. New instructions. New caution. Not because anyone had learned kindness, but because they had learned consequence. And somewhere between the dock and the headlines, a room full of powerful people understood something they'd never been forced to consider before. Belonging isn't decided at the door. It's decided by who can afford to close it. The dock was quiet again by nightfall. Water moved the way it always had, indifferent to reputations and mistakes. The yacht was gone, returned to its slip like nothing unusual had happened. Polished. Silent. Expensive. But something had shifted. Marcus stood by the railing for a moment before getting into his car, city lights reflecting faintly across the hood. He wasn't thinking about the hostess. Or the guests. Or the headlines that would fade by the end of the week. He was thinking about the moment before it all turned. The moment someone decided who he was without asking. That moment was familiar. He'd met it in banks where his proposals were praised but redirected. In meetings where his data was trusted more than his presence. In rooms where access was offered conditionally, as long as he stayed quiet enough to be convenient. Tonight hadn't been different. It had just been public. Inside the yacht world, apologies would be drafted carefully. Language would soften. Responsibility would blur. People would insist it had been a misunderstanding, an unfortunate oversight, a breakdown in communication. Marcus knew better. It was never a misunderstanding. It was certainty. Certainty that power looked a certain way. Sounded a certain way. Arrived through the right door wearing the right assumptions. He opened the car door and paused. Because the real lesson of the night wasn't that power could remove a party. It was that dignity never needed permission to stand still. They hadn't lost because they were rude. They hadn't lost because they were careless. They lost because they decided belonging was theirs to grant. And the moment they did, they revealed something they couldn't take back. They had mistaken proximity for authority. And authority, Marcus knew, doesn't announce itself. It waits. Then it closes the door quietly, completely, and on its own terms.